windy. Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of Velocity Kinetics. You'll have noticed the surroundings have changed. That's my dash cam. This is my new car, or second car. There is a video reviewing it going to be made at some point soon. I think the music's about to kick on. I think it's Boston, more than the feeling. Yes. Don't know why Pulsar and Android Auto does that. Sometimes it'll start and then it'll back itself up a few seconds again. So you'll hear the same like 2 seconds 2 or 3 times, but there we are. So Happy New Year. As I sit recording this, I don't actually know if I'm going to post this video. So you might go, well, why are you talking like you will? Because I might. And there's a reason why it's a case of I might. So, as you've noticed, this is a new car, or new to me. I still have the Swace, so this is still, I'm still going to call it Swacecast, because I actually just quite like the name for these videos anyway. Because the Swace is not gone, it's Sarah's now. This is a Honda Civic. Anyone interested in the technical specs, it's a 2019 model, where you can have the hatchback or the saloon, and this is the saloon with a 1 litre 3-cylinder turbo power boost engine, which we might see if we can get some blow off noise or something when we get to a place where I can open the taps up a little bit. I don't feel in myself, just a general, but I don't quite feel myself at the moment. Neither does Sarah feel herself at the moment. And before you make all sorts of, let's be honest, masturbatory jokes when people say that, I'm not going to talk about that up front, because I want people to watch this or listen to this for what it is and not to feel sorry for us towards the at the start, and then either not listen because it's upsetting or just listen because it's a polite thing to do, perhaps. So I won't give too much away about this car because I want stuff to talk about in my in the review video. But basically, the reason why we landed on the Honda Civic is Sarah had been looking at since we sort of had a budget for a used car that we could there was no problem, we could afford it just. And there were a lot of Ford Focuses around, which she quite likes, and I'm not averse to driving a Ford Focus at all, because Fords are easy to drive. Sort of their party piece, really, that they're just easy to drive and get into. But we did have a debate as to whether Patrick Swacey went for something else, or if we... so Patrick Swacey went for something else quite new, and then I bought what is in the industry, I would assume the term is still applicable, a shitbox, for what driving I need to do. But on debate with that, there are some used cars, when I was looking at them, they got such questionable MOT history, and not just down to age, it's sort of clearly down, some of the things that failed are clearly down to neglect. It's sort of that is, for my liking, it's too much of a lottery. I can't, when I've got stuff to do and Sarah's got the Swace, or even when Sarah's just going to work, if we decide to keep the other way around and for me to keep the Swace, we can't afford to be waiting around for the AA half the time to come and get the car running if it's had a breakdown. And then some of the cars we're looking at in the budget we were working on, they're so... It's horrible to say they're so old, but for instance, we've been looking at diesel cars, Satan fuel, particularly ones that have the low or no road tax on them, to reduce the outgoings somewhere. that that idea got knocked into touch because I saw there were potential plans to remove the free road tax those cars benefit from, and change it to so they start paying. What I couldn't find though was a consistent and reliable source as to what they would be paying, and the fact the story exists means it's been discussed seriously enough by the powers that be for it to have made it as far as it has. And it's not the first time they've talked about taking away those cars' special status on road tax. So we were looking in cinch, as I mentioned, we had a budget for a used car. Some of the focuses we were looking at were very high mileage. We're talking 80,000 plus miles, 100,000 plus miles, and then they weren't as well equipped as some other cars for a lesser budget. Anything French was more or less ruled out. Sarah doesn't like Renaults very much, and well, some of the Peugeots that I ran insurance quotes on came out more than Japanese things. But we looked at things that rivaled the Ford Focus, because you don't really need anything bigger than a Focus. As much as I could attempt to justify it, we just don't. But I suggested perhaps a Honda Civic, because the Civics of the age I was thinking of, which is one of these, the interior in the hatchback was quite big, monster boots on them for a hatchback. And we found a diesel one that had, granted it was quite high mileage, I think it was 70,000, but still 10,000 less than other things. And plus, with it being Honda, you know, it'll be still running when the world goes nuclear. Well, let's see what we can get this to sing. Come off power because we're going to come down to a 30 in just a second. So we went to John Banks to see if they had a diesel one around that we could try, even if it was a diesel Jazz, because some of the engines would have been interchangeable, or HRV, CRV if the engines were interchangeable. I believe Honda did run a modular setup, although I'd have to double check that to be 100%, but given how many car manufacturers these days run a modular approach, but we saw this car sat there and we took it for a test. This is an EX, so it's the top of the line. It's got leather seats for a 68 2019 plate car, registered February 2019. Wireless charger, heated seats, built-in sat-nav, front and rear parking sensors, reversing camera, a nice boot for a saloon, a semi-automatic CVT, because as you've seen I've got the paddles. It's still ultimately a CVT, which I suppose is this car's weak point. But again, I'll try and avoid discussing that too much in this video. 1 litre 3-cylinder turbo engine, which puts out 124 horses, which is actually more than what the Swace puts out. Sunroof as well. Actually, let's a little bit more lighting, shall we? Yeah, it was sat there for just a shade under 15, and it had only done 33,000 miles. A 6-year-old car with that few miles on was just a no-brainer. That's not car knock, sorry. With the job I was doing, I've put something in the boot and I think it's rattling around, so don't worry, it's not a body or anything like that. It is just something I put in the boot for safe storage, potentially just rolling around. Might not even be picked up at all on the mic. So we saw this, we took it for a test drive, and Sarah drove it as well, and it's one of those things we just sort of looked at each other and went, do you know, we're probably not going to get anything much better. It's a good balance between It was a good balance between age and mileage. We knew we weren't likely to get anything new unless a family member suddenly turned around and said, we're going to give you X amount of money to help you get another car, or we're feeling generous, just have it, because such scenarios just don't exist without someone dying, and I don't want to come into money because of that, and that's not quite why we're feeling a bit down in the dumps. So what I've done is I've done the balloon payment. I've taken out a loan, done the balloon payment on the Swace, and bought this. So I own both cars outright. The private plate I bought a while ago is now sat on this car as well. I don't intend on this car going anywhere for quite a while. Some people might say, yeah, right, I'll believe that when I see it, and I don't disagree with your skepticism, because it is me, and a number of times I've said that and then I've done something. But if any car goes anywhere, it will be the Swace, because that's sort of going to become the main family car when hopefully family stuff happens. And I'd rather because I don't need to go anywhere, I don't need more than 1 litre and 3 cylinders for what I do. As long as I keep the oil topped up and keep it serviced, what do I need? And plus, when it makes a nice 5,000 RPM, oh, it shifted up itself. When it makes a nice 3-cylinder noise like that, I'm not going to argue. And when it drives as nicely as this Honda does, and the seats are as comfortable as they are, and it did a journey up to Newcastle not long after being purchased, and it did it without fuss. It was very comfortable, in some ways more comfortable than the Swace. It's not going to go anywhere anytime soon if I have it my way, unless of course I came into some money and it just made financial sense to. And even then I'm not sure what I'd replace it with. So that's why I've got this. It's a nice shade. It's a nice shade of blue. It's just an all-round nice, pleasant car to be in. To be honest, but like I said, I don't want to talk about it too much because I want to discuss it in the review video. So what about velocity kinetics in 2024, seeing as we are 2025? So I normally do those videos in front of my webcam, because I've got then have the YouTube up as I record. It's been an okay year for us. We've put out a lot more content than we have done other years. Or should I say, I have put out a lot more content. I'm so used to still saying we, thinking it was me, because it was me and Russ for so long. I've put out a lot more content this year than I have done other years. Sometimes it has just been just the silly Swacecasts. Well, silly. Some of it's been for my mental health, as in it gives me something else to think about other than work. It gives me a reason to go out. It gives me something to do. And I'm not doing this for money, views, what you call it, as much as I would like it to become, as I've discussed in other videos, as much as it would be nice for it to become a way of making money, either full-time or even just a nice little top-up. It's not likely going to happen for me, the rate things are going. Views on videos are typically up. For the most part, it's about 30 to 40 views a video, I would say, is typically the average. I've had more videos going to the 100 this year. It's, like I say, for me, considering I don't really shout about it very much, it's all good. And I just, like I say, I just do it because I like to do it. It's nothing wrong with doing something just because you like it. But as for what happens next year, a lot depends on how long it takes me to get out of my current flunk, which is why I'm sort of doing something now. A lot will depend on how long it takes me to get out of that funk, shitty feeling. lot will also depend on work. There's talk already that there's going to be redundancies again next year. Now, I do not know. I'm just going to wander off topic here, and maybe my left-leaning politics will shine through here. I don't know why so many businesses these days are constantly posting big profits and eternally getting rid of people. Last year the company I work for posted its record profits since it became its own company again. And yet they got rid of people left, right and centre. Now, don't get me wrong, if people are looking for things to do, as in sort of when you become one of those, well, what do you actually do sort of people, unfortunately, if you can't justify your position, you've got to go. But I've also heard stories that people have to go because they've overspent on certain things, because we wanted to move to an agile way of working, which I know some people would say, if I'm using that tone of voice, well, clearly you don't care, you're not interested in it, you don't want to change. It's not that. It's the fact they throw the terminology around like I'm supposed to know what it is. And then when you ask for an explanation, you sort of get, well, I shouldn't have to explain it to you, sort of as a response. It's like, well, I've never worked in that sort of project leadery, artsy cunty. Look at me, I know what I'm talking about. If I throw all the words around, I'll look clever. Sort of world, the apprentice world, I suppose you could say. I don't know. I want to learn, but I can't learn if you don't tell me what it is I'm supposed to be doing. And I stand by it. I stand by that sentiment. If you don't tell me what it is I'm supposed to be doing, how am I ever meant to suss it out? And if you keep hiding all the knowledge behind, well, you should know that sort of wall, then again, how am I supposed to know what I'm doing? And then just throwing out terms like, well, we're going to put it on a Kanban board and then we'll do a retro through the Scrum, we're going to have the Scrum of Scrums. And you keep throwing language around like that. It's like, I can't keep up. I have a finite amount of brain space. And like I said, it's not for lack of trying on my part. But when I ask for an explanation, don't throw out an explanation using all the same terms that I don't understand. And that's half the fucking problem. But, yeah, anyway, there's potentially yet more redundancies on the horizon. To be honest, I think we're doing fire and rehire is not necessarily fire and rehire. It's letting... I don't even know how to explain it. I can't explain it. All I know is if I know it might sound like a childish statement, if I was in charge of the company, but if I wasn't, what the fuck have they done here? Holy cow, were all these that dead and damaged? Good grief. But if I was in charge of the company, if people have been in roles for years and proven they can do it, so effectively granddad rules or grandfather rules, I think it's the more correct term that they would use. Why get rid of people? Oh, you haven't got the right skills and certification. Even though you've been doing the job for 10 years, you haven't got the certifications to say you can do it. So we're getting rid of you and getting someone else. Like, what? Which is what happened to one of my colleagues. Now, he's a fucking good laugh, good bit of crack. He'd been doing the job for 9 years. Wasn't aware that there was these certifications he could have gotten, because he said to me if he knew they existed, he probably would have investigated getting them, or at the very least actually done them. Well, sorry, the other way around. He would have done them, or at the very least investigated them, made a business case for them to pay for the company to pay for it for him. They've gotten someone in who's never done the job before, happens to have one of the certifications, but they've never done this job before. So things that used to happen within minutes are now taking hours, because
travel news for you, and a bank holiday timetable on Greater Anglia trains today, as it is New Year's Day. London.
This car's been set up for traffic announcements to come through, which is good, because I missed that on the Swace, but or at least I don't know where the program, where the options in the menus, or somewhere between that and I just haven't looked. But I can't get it to stop when it's on Android Auto. The guy did, tasks that you would send him to send his replacement to do take hours to get done, because he doesn't know who to contact, which is not unfair. And the guy who left, because they wouldn't let him keep his job after all those years, I believe he even got the union involved. He understandably went petty on the way out and said, well, no, if you deem I'm not, basically that's the thing you see on Reddit quite a lot. If you don't deem me competent enough to do my job, then why am I going to train someone and give them my contacts, because you deem me not competent enough to know? So why should I? And I fully agree with his pettiness on the way out. 110% agree. I know it's a statistical anomaly, but I couldn't agree with the man more. It's in many ways, this last year's been incredibly stressful on that front. The company I work for, my job has been threatened so many times since I joined them in 2018 that at times I do wonder whether I should have stayed at Santander, even though they had pushed me to the verge of an absolute mental health breakdown. Well, they hadn't pushed me to the verge. I did have. I'm just going to go down this road to do a turn around / see what is actually down here, because it's supposed to be something English Heritage, which Sarah likes. We have a membership, we don't use it very much. Lots of English Heritage places around East Anglia for anyone who's wanting to visit. Loads of them, and lots of National Trust as well if you're interested in that sort of thing. Also quite a lot of steam museums as well, like Bressingham, the Whitwell and Reetham, Suffolk Light, and so on. This is interesting. So there's somewhere I can eventually turn around. I'm not too bothered. Lindsay. Where's that English Heritage sign then? Bring my speed down even more, because as you can see, it's very narrow. Should just keep it in fourth, because that's good RPMs gives me okay RPMs to pick up if I need to, and this car can just about cope with it at 20 mile an hour. I'm just going to pull in this pub car park actually. Just gonna have a look at the map to see where this place is. Oh, a little kitty. The screen is not the most responsive at times on this. I'll have to consult my guidebook. Or we'll just turn around the way we came. I needed to turn around anyway. Excuse me. I've also had a cold that I just can't shift. I lost my voice again this year. I lost it 2 or 3 times on the bounce, which is not good. And it's been something that's been happening most years since I worked in the call centre, because you use your voice so much, and because you're penalised for when you go to the toilet, or rather they count it against you somehow, and like, use the toilet too much, like, is everything okay? You've used 10 minutes of comfort and you're only allowed 9.5. And I wish, granted the voice is exaggerated, but the sentiment and those comments aren't. There was one day I was struggling to keep food down. No, it wasn't. I did work when I was struggling to keep food down. But massive nosebleeds, that's what I've been having. I've been having mammoth nosebleeds. I think it was a stress thing, to be honest. It's like, look, it's sort of a, they're like, well, why did you use, whoa, nearly got that badly wrong. That corner came at me faster than I expected. Yeah, there's a reason why on these smaller roads 60 is not a good idea. But I got told I was using too much comfort bit, but I was like, well, yeah, I'm losing colossal amounts of blood through my nose, and I'm still here working. I got into so much trouble, but I think they were on their arse for staff. I think my spottiness there was better than if I wasn't. And I know there is a joke in there about spotting and bleeding. Anyway, there's enough of that. But anyway, like I said, I'm sometimes wonder, why did I leave that job, given how often this job's been under threat. But a colleague I used to work with reckoned that I was next up on the list of people who were going to be pushed out the door at Sunday. Anyway, so who knows? Although that might have, if I'd stayed, it might have actually cost me my sanity fully. Well, we wouldn't have been able to leave the North East if I'd chosen to stay. I'd have had to have found another job down here. Probably couldn't have transferred in the same way my current company allowed me to transfer. Anywho, we'll have to see what happens in the next year. But Sarah and I are hoping for certain things to change family-wise, so this may not have time. And this might fall by the wayside, which, if it does, it does. It's not something that's making money, so it's not an income stream I rely on. So there we are on that. But overall, I've really wandered around in topic today. You can sort of tell my mind is not where it wants to be. I know I get a bit scatterbrained, or scattermouth might be a better way to describe it. I know I do wander around when I'm doing these videos, but I feel like I'm doing it even more so than normal today. The elephant in the room now, because I can't think of anything else I'd like to talk about, is the why Sarah and I don't feel so good. Now, like I said, day of recordings, 1st of January 2025. This time of year for a lot of people is not always sunshine and roses, like media will have you leave, or people on social media will be like, I've had my Christmas tree up since the 1st of November. It's like good for you, sort of thing. And a lot of people, like, for years, might sound like it's a criticism of Sarah, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. If you ask me then, it's a fair criticism. Ask me now, maybe not. Maybe an unfair criticism. But for years I've never really been a fan of Christmas. Just haven't. Sometimes I just get sick to death of the familial obligations. And when I was growing up, because my dad was a vicar, my Christmas was never... I couldn't just have a normal Christmas like a lot of people. I was always expected to attend church God knows how many sodding times, and no matter what sort of teenage tantrum or temper I threw, or registration of my not happiness, I still had to go multiple times. There was one year, I'm pretty sure, because of expectation, I think over Christmas we went something like 6 times. And I know some people, my sister in particular, will say, well, you know, you shouldn't have you've got such a chip on your shoulder about that sort of thing. It's like, yes, but because you are sort of semi-religious yourself, or are religious, oh God, because you are religious yourself, you're not going to see it that way. You're not going to appreciate it from my could I have not just been left to make my mind up perspective. But, and then when I lived in Middlesbrough and lived on my own, not as in it was hard to have a nice Christmas on my own, but there was one year I got absolutely shafted by Santander, where they wouldn't let me have the Christmas leave I wanted. I can't remember the exact reasoning why, so it may have been something on my end where I may have been too slow, or may have had some other leave in, so I was last at the list because it was done on a first come first served basis quite often. I may have just been too slow in my request. I honestly don't remember. But the company also owed me a lot of time, because we used to work on an annualised hours basis, so sometimes you'd owe them time, sometimes they'd owe you. And in the 6 and a bit years I worked for them, I never once owed them time. They always owed me, and the smallest amount of hours they ever owed me was 1 working day. The most it got to was 2 weeks. Or 2.5 weeks actually. 2.5 weeks is what they owed me at one point. One Christmas I was told I couldn't have the leave I wanted, because I wanted to go home and see my mum and dad for Christmas, and I couldn't. So I spent Christmas Day and Boxing Day in Middlesbrough on my own, and this is when Christmas fell in the middle of the week. I think Christmas was a Tuesday, Wednesday, or a Wednesday, Thursday. So I finished work on Christmas Eve, went home, did Christmas Day, Boxing Day, went to work on the 27th. I was meant to be working 9 till 6:30 that day. So it was already a suspiciously long shift, because no one else on my team was working a shift that long. And I don't understand why my lunch was stupidly early on one of those shifts, or at least I thought it was stupidly early. And apparently when I was at lunch, someone came looking for me. I thought, oh shit, what am I in trouble for? Because, let's be honest, in a call centre, when someone's looking for you, typically you've done something wrong. Or at least some people, well, it wasn't a healthy environment in the first place, to be honest, because that is always the gut feeling when someone wants a word with you. They then came looking for me again at 2 o'clock. They said I could go home, because the call volumes just weren't there. There was something wrong in their forecasting. They forecast more calls than were actually coming through. And I also think someone had cottoned on just how much annualised hours I had accrued, how many hours they owed me. They said, "Oh, it's okay, Chris, you can go home. We don't want to see you until the 3rd of January. You can have the rest of the year off to burn up that time that you're owed." Like, excuse me? What? I was happy that I got to go home, but I was properly cheesed off. I know that much. Well, more than properly. I was spitting feathers. I was apoplectic with rage, and there's no other word for it. It was rage. When I got home, I was furious. But it also meant I could have gone to see Sarah over Christmas, or she could have come down, because I had an invite to go up to her family for Christmas, and I said I declined it because I didn't know what I was doing, and I knew I had to work on the 27th. Yeah, it was not overly good. So I've had a love-hate relationship with Christmas. This year, for once, for the first time in a number of years, I wasn't sort of getting all, "It's Christmas," like the guy from Slade. I was just sort of feeling a bit, yeah, I get it this year. I wasn't, like I say, not painting the town with tinsel, not running around with the fairy lights, but other years I've dragged my heels putting the Christmas tree up, or been a bit anti putting it up when Sarah's wanted to put it up. This year was like, yeah, let's do it. Very positive. And then something happened which sort of destroyed any feeling for Christmas. Now I'm going to backtrack a bit, because you might say, well, why were you talking about Christmas and now you're going to be talking about your cats? Although the astute amongst you will know where I'm heading with this, or might know where I'm heading. So we've got two cats, George and Izzy. George, my lovely tomcat. Sorry, my lovely tomcat. We took them both in. A mutual friend of mine and Sarah's. Well, she is now a mutual friend of both of us, but she was my friend. We knew Sarah and I were looking for a cat, and they had some friends who were emigrating to Australia, and they didn't want to take the cats because George and Izzy like to go outside. And in Australia, apparently, you can't let your cats out overnight. And so we took them. They were 6 at the time when we got them. So in one of the first videos in 2023, I think George makes an appearance because he's on and off my lap quite a lot. And he's made appearances in other videos, like the Top Gear video, where he makes an appearance by jumping down the fence and landing on the barbecue. Let's say, adorable lad, and I think he knew he looked cute. He suddenly looked quite fat. Now, I know I've had friends who've had cats, their cats have suddenly gotten fat, and it's because they haven't used the litter tray for days, for reasons unknown, or they've hunted a lot, or, you know the... or they've hunted a lot, they've found another food source, they've gotten fat. And for a few days, that's what we thought with George. But because he seemed to just keep getting bigger and bigger, I took him to the vet. The vet had a feel and said, he does just seem like he's put some weight on, or / he just needs to go to the toilet. So give him a week, give it a couple of weeks, see what happens. But also take a note, measure his middle, measure his waistband, just to keep an eye on how much weight he might actually be putting on. So we did, and one day he put on 2 inches in less than 12 hours. So I called the vet, and they're like, "Oh, that's not good. Bring him in." The vet we then saw said it seems like George has got fluid inside him. We need to do an ultrasound to see exactly what's going on. There's something clearly not right. Went back the next day for an ultrasound. They couldn't see much because of so much fluid, but on that first appointment they drained 600 mils of fluid out of George. 600. That's just short of 2 cans of Coke if you can't quantify it. Nearly 2 cans of Coke, Pepsi, whatever your poison of choice is, out of a cat that normally weighs 5 kilos, or should weigh about 5-ish kilos. He put on 10% of his body weight in a couple of weeks, which is not healthy. Regardless of how it's happened, it's not a healthy change. They said something didn't quite look right on the ultrasound from what they could see, but they needed a CT scan to be completely clear. So I took him for a CT scan a little bit later, not that day, about 3-4 days later. He was not looking himself, and the poor thing just looked terrible because they'd shaved so much of his fur off so they could do the ultrasound and drain fluid. Took him for a CT. I was waiting to hear back on the results. The vet that ordered the CT was on annual leave, so he couldn't phone us. But in the meantime, the cat's normal annual check came up. George looked terrible. He'd weed in his carrier box, which was very unusual for him. He'd never done that. He just looked awful. Let's say he just looked awful. He looked so feeble for a cat that looks so grand and majestic in so many pictures I've got of him. He just looked awful. And he gave me such a firm bunt on the head. Now, normally he'd give me a bunt, sometimes on the head, sometimes on the hand, but like a lot of cats, he'll sort of bunt and rub. This time, though, he just gave me a bunt right here and didn't let go. Just kept pressing his head into my head. And looking back, I think he was giving me a sign. But on the vet's appointment, they told me to leave him there. Izzy was fine on hers. They leave him there, they'll drain some more fluid off because he seems to have accumulated more. They took another 350 mils out of him that day, and he looked visibly more relaxed. At home, he was struggling to curl up. He wasn't jumping up and down very much onto things. We'd had an instruction to keep him inside, probably because of his exposed belly with it all being shaved. And then when on the Friday appointment, they told us to make an appointment for a biopsy because what they saw on this other vet on the CT, they thought it was just a bad infection in his lymph nodes. Again, anyone who's had cats or has had humans who have had similar sort of results, I think you can see where this is going. His normal vet came back on the Tuesday. No, I called on the Monday to say, look, I called on Monday the 23rd to say, look, I don't care how much it's going to cost. Can we just get this biopsy and things done so we know what we're dealing with and how long we're dealing with? Because I suspected, well, as you do in that situation, you begin to think this is potentially the end. So I took him in on the following day for his biopsy. His normal vet was back, so I dropped George off for 9:15. No, I didn't. 9:15. I don't think 9:15, because that's Izzy's next appointment. No, I dropped George off for 9:15 that morning. By the time I got home at I've been home about 10 minutes, about 9:20 after everything and the traffic getting home. By 9:30, I'd had a phone call to say from his normal. The vet made the recommendation. He said, "Look, all of George's lymph nodes are enlarged. It would appear to be a cancer we're dealing with. There are options such as steroids to try and shrink what's going on, but you're buying him weeks. You're not buying him months or years. You are buying him what is ultimately a very short period of time, if it works at all. So on Christmas Eve, I'd gone from taking George to the vet for what I thought was a biopsy and another fluid drain under anaesthetic to make him as comfortable as possible, to having to make the worst decision ever when it comes to owning an animal. Sarah and I had to make the decision, because I had to deal with a lot of this on my Todd, because Sarah had worked night shift. Now I realise out of context I might sound like she didn't want to deal with it. She did want to deal with it. She was just as concerned about George as I was. She'd just come off a night shift and needed to sleep. I woke her up after less than 2 hours sleep and said, look, we've got to make a decision what to do with George. Izzy and him had spent the weekend before really huddling together a lot. I think Izzy knew the end was near for George, and looking back on that Friday, if cats could talk, I think he was saying to me, look, it's okay, if this is the end, this is the end, sort of thing, with that really, really firm bunt. So I'm trying not to cry, but I think that's what he was trying to tell me. And so 11:57 Christmas Eve, he went over the Rainbow Bridge. The hardest bit about all that is he had been so perfectly healthy, and looking through some of my pictures of him on my phone, you can suddenly see, I was like, hang on a minute, I scrolled through my pictures, and 2 days apart he's gone from being quite svelte to suddenly quite enlarged. But from what the vet sort of implied, even if we brought him in then, it looked like it sounds like it was curtains for George. The poor boy was only 8.5. He in many ways was my shadow. He was so friendly. He'd sit on my lap for hours at a time. He would sleep on me for hours at night, thinking he was being stealthy, making biscuits and chirping whilst he did it. He used to give me such a firm bunt on the leg when I was feeding him in the morning and at night. He would devour catnip drinks by the handful. So I don't mean to bring the tone down, but there might be a bit of a break in content for a little while whilst I get my head screwed on right, because I think what makes the whole thing with George worse, because Sarah and I both were getting very upset. I don't remember the last time I cried so much over someone not being very well. I may not have even cried that much when my granddad died, and I was quite close to my granddad. I'm not even sure I cried that much when my other cat died years ago when I was 17. Of course Boston would kick in then. I honestly don't know how to feel at the moment, because a bit of my brain is like, he's just a cat, but at the same time, he was more than a cat. He was mine and Sarah's family, and with the issues we've had starting a family, and having had to put George down, you can't help, rightly or wrongly, or fairly or unfairly, connecting dots in your head that go, it's just the world saying, the universe saying that we can't have a family. And I'm not going to lie, I have seriously thought, well, what's the point? It's... Oh, I don't bloody know. It's still there. Still got it. Just in case anyone doubted me. So, yeah, we've got it. So, Christmas has gone. I know this is not a very Cars-related podcast today. I know it's not an overly Cars-related episode today, but I've gone from things being okay to not being that okay. And I've felt, with what was going on with George and for how long it was going on for, because it was a good few weeks, and we were both getting quite upset and things over it. The issue is, I suppose in many ways we were tortured. We were sort of pre-grieving and then actually grieving, because we both sort of suspected potentially it was the end of the line for him. And then he would sort of give us he would sort of rally, then he would have a decline, then rally. So it's been quite a confusing time. But ultimately, Christmas is about kindness, and the kindest thing we could do for George was to make that decision. And looking back with how, I know this might sound really weird, but with how much he relaxed when he went, it made me realise actually just how tense he was being. Probably to avoid wetting himself, because the one time he did miss the litter tray, he was very distressed. He was upset. He was clearly alarmed that he had. So, yeah, not good. Not a good way to start. Not a good topic potentially to start 2025. Hence why I've said I'm not gonna. Why I didn't want to talk about it at the start. But anyway, upcoming content. Hopefully, onto a more happy note. Well, it's not. I can't think how to discuss it without sort of going around in ever decreasing circles. But essentially, yeah, I miss my buddy. And also, content hasn't come out very much recently because my computer is on... It's not on its last legs, but it's an AMD FX processor. That's quite old now, and it just can't keep up anymore with doing video editing. Now, if all you do is watch Netflix on your computer or browse YouTube, write Word documents, it's still perfectly fine. I do more than that with my computer, so I've got a new one with I've got new bits coming soon, which should hopefully cut down render times, make editing a lot easier. I've just got to decide whether I'm going to upgrade to Windows 11 or whether I'm going to go Ubuntu and go Linux. There are pros and cons to both. As for content in 2025, sort of finish our sort of semi-review of 2024. It's going to be more the same, more Swacecast, even though it'll be from the Civic. There'll be a review of this, plus getting it to its service at however many miles that is, which actually reminds me I need to check when its service is due. There's also... There'll be also topics in the motoring world that'll just be generally discussed. Oh, actually, I have finally watched some Grand Tour. And in the Farewell Top Gear Trio video, I said, I haven't watched it because I didn't want to be hurt by things. Going into it, knowing it was sort of more of the same of what Top Gear became, made it a lot more watchable. Is probably the best way to put it. But I'll probably do another video discussing that in a bit more detail later. Anyway, drive safe, look after yourself, have a good 2025. We will see you next time.